Hi, good evening. I guess everyone can hear me. So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and the students who have joined the call. And really appreciate taking your time to join for this 1 hour session. Okay, I have some technical difficulties. I'm just trying to understand this platform as I'm completely new to this. So, my apologies for that. So, let me introduce myself. My name is Vaijayanthi, called as Viji. The topic that we are going to cover today is shape it or ship out. How do we really stay relevant and advance our career? That's the topic. And this becomes so much the need of the hour that today, given the uncertainty around us, there are many students with whom I have been talking in the last many months, I would say last 4 to 5 months. I have been doing many webinars. I have been meeting up with the students online, mentoring the students and doing remote internship with the students. One of the questions that they keep coming and asking time and again is, how do I really advance in my career? Given this, there are a lot of things happening around me. So I thought that this would be an apt topic to share my experiences on what I have seen typically happening in the industry, in the academia, and since closely working with bridging the industry and academia relationship in various capacity. So getting started now. So I want to cover this topic in basically three folds. One, the questions is around, this is the time many of the students are thinking about enrolling themselves for the engineering stream and getting into the mode of counseling with the campuses. The first thing that they want to understand is what is engineering, because that's the first thing we have seen, that the depth of understanding the engineering discipline would possibly help them to get where they need to get in the future. So the first thing we'll talk about what is engineering. Then second aspect that we are going to talk about is what is happening today around us. And finally, the third part that we will be talking about is how do we really get ready and what exactly do we need to do as a student. And this is pretty much relevant to anybody who's listening in this particular web streaming or the web series. This is applicable to anybody and everybody. How do we really get ready and create your own signature traits? So before I get on to dwell on to what is engineering, I want to take you back to a story a couple of years back. Somewhere around 2017, I think mid-2017, there were very different kind of reviews coming in the newspaper article and many magazines, which took many of us by surprise in the industry. It said that only 7% of the engineering graduates are really employable. And there were different kind of emotions that were coming from the industry, the emotions coming from the students. So that is when we were trying to understand from the students and from the industry what exactly is happening, how we can fix things. So many people came back and said, can we go ahead and tell the students what the engineering discipline is all about? Many times the students are getting enrolled into the engineering discipline because their parents would have requested them to get onto this, or they really did not have the definitive understanding about the engineering. Just because somebody else enrolled, they went and enrolled into the engineering discipline. This is where we thought setting the context on the engineering discipline and what it is all about becomes very, very relevant given the time that students are making the key decisions in their life. As we speak today, there are the generation that we are dealing with. The reason I'm going to the generation aspect is the generation that we are dealing with is Gen Z. They are going to be the next workforce coming into the organization. So if they are going to come into the organization, the first thing that we need to make them understand is you are the one who are either getting into engineering or kind of trying to understand what engineering discipline you want to get into. So I want to tell the students who are listening to this session, the engineering discipline stands on the 4 basic pillars. I call it as the pillars because they are closely connected to one another and they have a greater degree of influence on the society today. If you look at this particular picture that I'm showing on the screen, the engineering is I would say the profession or a stream which is going to talk to your science and technology. It's going to borrow the theories from the science, the tools from the technology, and it's going to try and take the resources from the nature and help produce something that is useful for the society. And we fail to understand many times these aspects. Interestingly, when we show this particular, I would say the picture to the engineering student when they come into the first year, what we have seen is, that is when they start asking many questions to us. The first question they came up and asked, if I were to do something for the society, taking the concepts from the science and tools from the technology and the resources from the nature to address the societal needs, do you think that we have to start looking at an idea which early on in my engineering curriculum? And that becomes a very interesting conversation when we go to the campuses and start counseling the students. Now, what we tell the students is, remember one thing, when you are getting into engineering, the first thing that you need to do is, before even getting into the disciplines of the engineering, you need to first understand that whatever you are doing in engineering today, in some form or the fashion, should address the societal needs. That's point number 1. Second point that we always also tell the students at early on is, try and understand the societal problem around you using the engineering discipline concept that you can address. That is the second thing that we tell them. And third thing that we tell them is, now you decide what engineering discipline you want to get into to address the needs of the society. Now, one thing that always resonates with me very well, I want to take you back to the era of 1800. The reason being, when we were trying to do some research around the engineering when I was writing my book, and I'm an author, so when I was writing my book, it was very, very surprising to see that the French military in the later 17th century is where the birth of engineering profession came into existence. And this was very interesting to me because the most of the engineering concepts at that point in time revolved around the infrastructure, the roads and the bridges. Now today when you talk to most of the engineering students, what we see is they think that IT and the computer science is the only engineering discipline that is available. So I want to really tell them that take out the engineering discipline, focus on the society, try to understand how do you really help to get the societal need addressed, and then decide on whether you want to go to which stream of engineering. That is one point I want to call out. The other thing is, there is always a kind of an overlap or people try to interchangeably use engineering and technology. One need to understand is that technology is the body of knowledge where people try to come and create something, and they have the processes and systems around this, and they have some learnings around this, and they have the artifacts that results from engineering. That is one thing we have to clearly understand. So my request is, never ever try to say engineering and technology is one and the same. Absolutely not. Science, engineering, technology are connected, but you have to keep the societal needs in mind before you get into the engineering stream. Now, since I touched upon the French, I want to also call out that you will be also surprised to know that as the education evolved, the Roman education and the Greek education is other aspects that we were researching around when I was writing the book, and got to know that Roman were more about building roads and Greek were more about training of the mind. So there were two distinctive education system that was coming up at that point in time. As and when we started exploring further, we saw that the education system then evolved around 1956. That's where I tell people that becomes so evident in the current era, which everyone knows as the Bloom taxonomy. I'm not getting into that aspect, but definitely one aspect stands out in the Bloom taxonomy is that the cognitive bit of it is very, very important, where we talk about how do we really take into consideration of memorizing and mental ability of the student to kind of acquire the knowledge that is required for the current discipline of study. With that thought process and expectation setting on what engineering is, I just want to take you to one interesting slide, because I've given you some 30 different engineering disciplines here, but this is not just the 30 disciplines that is available today. You can see in many forms and fashions and many combinations of engineering disciplines. I want to talk about my experience, because I'm a mother. I have a son who is doing his undergrad. The first time when I went and knocked the doors of the engineering college for his admission, they laid out in front of me the tons of engineering discipline, which I have no clue about. What to pick, what to choose, the child was equally confused. So I had to really go through the process of understanding the mindset of the student and see what really interests the student. Now, this is going to be a very critical piece of decision-making process when you are selecting the engineering discipline. Interestingly, the engineering discipline, when we all started, I would say around 20, 25 years, 30 years back, we probably had 5 to 10 disciplines. Probably you can talk about electrical, electronics, mechanical, civil, and so on and so forth. But today, you have so many combinational engineering degree, and I was surprised that there is something called as aeronautical and aerospace. I don't have much depth about every engineering stream, but I really had to spend substantial amount of time with the child and with the to understand what exactly is the nuances and what goes beneath each of the engineering discipline. The reason I started with the engineering discipline is you would be surprised that many of you who are hearing to this particular web series would be on a similar crossroads like me. When a couple of years back I was, and now I have a clarity what my son is doing and what he needs to do. I'm sure many of you are in the similar crossroads. What is next? What is my ward going to do next? What is my girl going to do next? What is my son going to do next? So just want to leave you with a thought that when you are picking up the engineering discipline, and also to the students, when you are picking up the engineering discipline, try to understand what goes in each of this. Just do not pick something that by the namesake. Every engineering discipline has been carved out with a specific purpose. And that is something I want to leave with a thought here, right? So I just want to set the context of what engineering looks like and what engineering discipline looks like today. Now, what is happening today? That's an interesting part. That is going to define what we are going to do next and what the students need to do next, and how the parents can help the student to what to do next as well. So what is happening today? Interestingly, we are in a pandemic situation. Everybody agrees to that. There is a lot of uncertainty around us. We keep hearing this called digital is everywhere. Digital is going to change everything. Everybody needs to be keeping digital in the core. Now, this particular instance or the article has been a great eye-opener for many of the parents, including me. Now, you might be wondering, why am I showing a Rafael Nadal, the tennis player, and showing a picture on the left, which is about the digital to the core. Now, you would be surprised that when Rafael Nadal was approached by Eric Babelot. The Babelot is a company which makes tennis. When I read the story, I was surprised. I'm narrating the story, what I came across. When Eric Babelot reached out to Nadal and said that he has come up with a very innovative racket, and if he can use that racket while he plays, He wants to monitor how the racket, how is he playing. The racket can monitor the strokes and how fast he's able to hit the ball and so on and so forth. So Nadal was really surprised. He saw the every movement and every aspect of his play in his mobile phone with all the deep analysis. Now, this left with a thought to many of us like me as if a sporting industry, which has got nothing to do with technology, is changing so fast, that means it is not going to leave us alone. It's going to make us also think in a similar direction. That is when there are three aspects that came as when I was reading about this. One of the three aspects that came in digital to the core was, if you have to think about digital, and an engineering discipline is also getting there, that's why I'm setting this context right here. What is going to happen is, every industry, including your sports industry, is trying to remap their industry based on what is happening with a competitor, how the technology is going to play a greater role in terms of transforming the industry. That is one. Second, they are also educating their employees as to how they have to think digital and how they have to really remodel the enterprise and educate the employees. That's the second aspect. The third aspect that they are doing is, as part of the digital to the core in every organization, is how the person who is running the organization is able to have the conviction and the belief and is able to remake himself in terms of believing in digital. Now, this is how the organizations are looking at, and this is how even the sports industries are looking at, who has got nothing to do with digital. Just to give you a flare of what's happening here, on the right hand side, you can see some text around here, and how the industry is looking completely different today. Now, if this is the pace in which your industry is changing, and this is the pace in which the expectations from the future generation or Gen Z who are going to come to workforce is going to be, so how are we really going to prepare ourselves for? So now you have the engineering, you know the engineering discipline, now you know the expectations from the industry. Everyone is looking at digital, and digital is going to be the core. So what am I supposed to do next? That's the question many times the students have come and asked us. And that is when the next question they came and asked us in the recent past. I put this for a reason, because it is just not the technology disruptions. Now, your pandemic disruptions has also caused a lot of uncertainty among the students. Now, the earlier one that you saw about the digital to the core was the digital disruption and technology disruption. But today, you're being stared by the pandemic disruptions. Now, what am I supposed to do now? This is not a question in front of the students alone, not even in front of the academia alone. This is a question that is there in front of many of the people who are working within the corporate. You would be very surprised to know that I keep listening to one Mr. Bernard Marr, who's a technologist, and he beautifully put it, and this is really happening around us. Many of you know that. There are 9 future predictions that have been made about the post-pandemic world that is happening today, the pandemic that's happening today. And one of it that stood out is your contactless interfaces and interactions. So you're going to have the fewer number of touch screen, you're going to have voice-enabled system more and more. So that is one aspect. And we are already seeing that happening around us. And that's going to be more and more prevalent in the coming days. The second thing that we are seeing is your infrastructure is going to be strengthened in the organization. More and more investments are going to be made around that. You're going to see companies making investments on the security aspects of the infrastructure. Third, we are also seeing that companies are going to use more of big data and IoT in terms of not only monitoring, but also making some predictive analytics. You see a lot of people latching on to the opportunity in learning data science and business analytics. So we see a great opportunity there, right? And then you also see that people have started more relying on robot and other kind of AI-enabled systems. And this is happening today, and this has been happening at a slower pace in the past, but today it has really caught up because of these pandemic situation, and this is going to remain for long, and this is how the world is going to move on, right? And as you see now, the more and more digital events are happening. That's what I tell students. We have been conducting webinars after webinars, but that digital events are going to be more and more. And this is what the technologists are saying. Now, this is how the world is going to look like. This is how the world is going to march forward. Then the next question that lies is, what is next for me in terms of the work? Now, this is something that we have been seeing this in the last, I would say, a year or so. People have been talking about it. And this is going to become, I would say, more prevalent in the coming days for the newer generation, what we call it as a gig economy. Now, this few months back, I just want to narrate another story, incidents I came across. In fact, around 5 months back, the student came to me on a LinkedIn and he started messaging me and he started asking me, do I have an opportunity to work on an internship within your organization? And that is when I said, definitely we can explore. And then he said, I did make it happen because there was an opportunity, we did make it happen. And that's when there are a few more students after that who came and asked me. And that's when they said, we are not getting many internship opportunity. We are not getting many job opportunity. So can you tell me what I need to do next? This was a question asked to me during the internship when the students were completing the internship. This is the question they keep asking me during the LinkedIn messaging that I have with the students. And I said, this is very clear that your freelancing is going to be one of the area where more focus is going to be there in the coming days. And that's very clear. Many of the articles, many of the technologists have been saying this time and again. And one of that is, of course, the gig economy. Most of us know it, what it is, but just for the others to set the context, it's more like how you can be an independent person working on what you like. You don't have any boundaries. You have no shift, no boss, no limit. That is the tradition. That is the way that newer generation want to get and work onto. So your traditional way of working is going to change. Now, we need to look into this gig economy world more critically. And this is the way the work is going to be. And this is the way the world is going to transition itself. Now, I understood, Viji. Now you'll be asking me, Viji, now you understood. You said engineering discipline. You went to what is the technology disruption that is happening. You're saying what the world is going to look like in terms of the world. But what do I do next? What is that, and how do I prepare myself? That is a question that is laid in front of most of us now. Before getting on to that, what we are interestingly also seeing, before we see how do we get on to understanding how we transform ourselves and how we prepare, I want to show you one interesting slide. This slide is very, very important for the student because your engineering discipline of the future is not going to look like what it was looking 5 years back, 10 years back, or 20 years back. If I have to quote an example, we are seeing 3 flavors of engineering discipline. And one of the flavors that we have seen around 25 years back is multidisciplinary. When I started, most of us started who are in their mid-40s or who are Gen X. We saw that there used to be a discipline where we had engineering in silos. Either you were an electrical engineer, mechanical, civil. We never have seen a blend of multiple discipline of engineering coming together. But today what you're seeing, the millennials who have seen it in the recent past, is there is an overlapping of discipline that is happening. And when I say overlapping, typically one example to go with this, if you say mechanical, robotics, electronics all put together, you see mechatronics coming up. And mechatronics was very unheard of if you ask me 25 years back. Now that is the discipline that we are talking about in terms of engineering. But how is it going to look like in the future from now on? That is where we are seeing that multiple disciplines of engineering are going to be overlapped, And that is what we are calling as transdisciplinary. Now, how is it going to happen? And when is it going to happen? It is already happening in some form, but we have to really see how the technology transitions are going to happen in the near future. Because with all of this technology on AI, VR, whatever you call it, multiple technologies on big data, you have blockchain and everything, you're going to see that the transdisciplinary is one area where your boundaries are going to be getting blurred more and more. When I was talking to my father, who passed out in 1967, to be more precise, from an engineering college, I was surprised to know that the engineering discipline was 5 years. Today we are talking about 4 years engineering. They did 5 years of their engineering course. So they had a vocational training as part of their engineering curriculum, which of course we don't have it today. We call it as an internship though, but they made it as a vocational training as a mandatory part of those 5 years. Now, how is it going to be in the future? Possibly the expectations are going to be that students will have to be on their toes, learning on their own, and nobody is going to be teaching them. You're not going to hear the word called teach. It's going to be more of learning process. And that's why we keep telling that you have to be a lifelong learner. Many times you must have seen people coming and giving talks about how do you be a lifelong learner and what is the shelf life of the knowledge. You will see that people will say the shelf life of the knowledge of the 4-year engineering degree by the time you come out is possibly half of that. That means only 2 years. By the time you come out, you have to again augment your knowledge. That is the kind of speed that we are looking at in terms of the transdisciplinary kind of the engineering discipline of the future. The students is going to have more onus, and they have to be really getting geared up for that. Now, are we to worry about it now? Many of the students will ask me. Of course, yes, you will have to. Why? Because even you might not be thinking about the blurring of boundaries in the engineering campuses that you are in. By the time you get to work and you are in the industry, you are going to see this coming and hitting you hard, and you will be undergoing the training, reskilling, upskilling, and other things. We keep hearing this time and again in the industry because we are preparing our workforce to get to know as much as they can in terms of the newer technologies and get them to the forefront of the technologies. And that it's better that we start preparing right away in terms of getting into the learning process and the learning group. Now, having said this, I'm not going to get into that. Just to leave you with one more thought. AICT and other bodies and other organizations are very clear that the artificial intelligence, IoT, and mobility analytics and cloud are going to be some of the emerging disciplines in the coming future. So that means, as an engineering student, you are going to be any discipline, whether you are in mechanical, you are in civil, some form or the fashion. You are going to be stayed by the technology, and you will have to know a little bit of all of these technologies because it's not going to leave you. It's going to be there, and you have to start embracing it. And that is what it's going to be. So start getting prepared. And I also tell the academia and the students that start getting prepared for the future technology and see what kind of an investment and what kind of a planning needs to be done in terms of getting geared up for this. Now, are we ready? It's a question to ask. Are we all ready? I would say we are getting ready, but we are not yet there. So what do we need to do? Now, when we were doing a research in 2017, that's when I started the conversation. When we were doing the research in 2017, and all of these rave reviews were coming about the engineering discipline, we went ahead and interviewed around, I would say, more than 500 students across pan-India. And we saw what exactly is making them different and what kind of signature trait do they carry that they are so very different and they are successful as well. And that's when there was a beautiful framework we saw falling in place, what we call it as the Shape It framework. And IT is not an IT discipline. I'll come to that in a minute. Shape, the word that you see, the first thing is the self-learner. Many of the students, it's a compendium of 50 student stories in the book. I have the book right in front of me, just in case you are interested to see this book. So S is the self-learner. Where we saw this, the students are the person who are a go-getter, who is learning on its own, and who are flipping through the pages and to the libraries and going through the newer happenings and technologies, programming themselves, dirtying their hands, rolling up the sleeves and working and learning themselves. So that self-learning aspect was very evident in the students. We saw them very, very successful. And not only they learned, they started applying that. That's where the hands-on came in. In fact, in one of the interesting observation that we had, in one of the students we met, he was having a problem in washing his clothes. He used to have a fun time with his friends, and then one day he couldn't have the fun time. So the friends were making fun of him as to why he's not coming for possibly a cup of tea or have fun. He said, I have a lot of laundry to wash. So they came up with a very innovative way of a bike and a washer together. I think that was a beautiful idea, a simple idea, but they came up because that was a need of the hour, and they thought it is a fun. They can use it as a gym equipment, and we thought that the students whomever we met, they saw some kind of a purpose. They learned something. They applied hands-on. They saw a purpose. They saw a problem, and they applied it. So that's where the hands-on came in, and this resonates so well with me, because many times my son comes and tells me I have a lot of laundries to do and I have a problem. So this example stands out, and I keep telling him, look at how the problem was flipped into an opportunity by a student. And that's exactly what they did. So hands-on, whatever they learned, they applied. That was a hands-on. Now, what we have seen with the students is also, in the research that we have done, is they are always looking out for something what is happening new. And this is true even today, even if we are in the corporate, whether you are in the campus, whether you are a school student. Everybody, we keep hearing this word, be curious, be curious, be curious. Of course, Antennas is all about being curious. And that's what is all about Antennas. The problem solving. The biggest problem when we were talking with some of the students, they said, the biggest problem that we have is we don't recognize there is a problem. And that's very true. And how do we really identify a problem? And all of these students, they knew what problem they are really having, and how do they really need to tackle the problem. And that is where identifying a problem and solving a problem, that is the next big trait that we saw these students had. And finally, what we saw was entrepreneur. Entrepreneur is not about selling themselves, it's selling the idea, selling an idea to somebody who can get convinced that your idea is genuine, and I can believe in the idea. So these 5 of the traits that we saw very evident, and what made them very successful in spite of the technology shifts that were happening so fast, in spite of whatever engineering discipline they were working on, these 5 traits came out very, very evident. 1 is self-learning, 2nd, hands-on, 3rd, antennas up, 4th is problem solving, and then the next is the entrepreneurship. Now, there was another key thing that stood out. Now, you might be wondering what IT is. What we found in these students were these 5 traits manifested and blossomed because they had something called as an internal transformation. They were believing in themselves that they can do it. And they did primarily because of 4 different key aspects. 1 is, of course, the branding. They had created the brand for themselves. They were networking. The networking they were using beautifully. They were trying to connect with the venture capitalists. They were trying to work with the faculty on the research. They were trying to get the ideas. They were trying to bounce their ideas to the layman and trying to get their viewpoint. And those were the things that they were using the networking very, very effectively. And the third thing that we also saw that they were quite self-aware of what they are doing. They knew what they were doing. They knew they want to do the right thing without really hurting somebody, right? That's the third thing that was evidently coming up. And the fourth thing, interestingly, many of the students whom we met, they did not do any kind of a product or services which stood alone in one engineering discipline. It was a combination of engineering discipline, and that is where they partnering with their other team members and working together, thinking together, and giving the due respect for the other individual came out very, very well. So when you look at this, the internal transformation, that is what today we call it as a personal branding and whatnot. But what we saw is the internal transformation was able to blossom the 5 different traits, signature traits of self-learning, hands-on, antennas up, problem solving, and entrepreneur. Now, did we really apply that? Did I really apply the question that I get asked multiple times? And that's a question some of you have been asking me before the session as well. Of course, yes. A few weeks back, I was sharing about my career blueprint to some of them. And I was telling them that every forward move of mine, knowingly or unknowingly, these 5 traits have been applied. And why do I say that? I want to talk about my own personal experience. When I was graduating out in 92 from my engineering discipline, I had no idea what to look in for. We never had something called as a campus placement. We just used to go and go to the employment exchange, look at the paper ads and apply for the job, go to the offices, give our resumes, and that's the kind of trend at that point in time. So we never really had a mentor, or we never had this kind of a framework to help us or to guide us. But invariably, every time what we did, we failed, and then we learned. We applied that learning in the next experience, and then we were looking, and then we became curious that we need to be aware of what is happening around us because we should not fail again. And then we started becoming more and more careful. So in my case, that's exactly what happened. 92, I passed out, and I got into my first job, and I'm very proud to say I went and joined Murugappa Group. Earlier it was called as the ID Parry Electronics Division. When I went there, I joined as a research engineer there. So when I went in there, so it was a learning for me. Now I had gotten into a job, but now how do I really progress in my job? Now, because at that time, the technology transition was not so much as you see today. It was just moving at a pace it needs to move, and we are all comfortable accepting the changes as and when it was coming. But when I immediately transitioned from this job to a newer country, a newer place, that is when I realized that I need to again learn. I'm not going to sit back and relax because that's not going to help me to grow. So this framework, unknowingly, I started applying the learning process every time when I went through a newer situation, applying it hands-on and being curious about what is happening and being an entrepreneur, because many times I have faced the difficulty to get a job. I had to sell myself. I had to sell my ideas. I had to say that I exist. I always tell people I exist. Always when I say, please lift your hand. Many times students will say, yeah, I'm lifting. And it's, no, lift your hand high up, because or else you're going to become a drop in an ocean. So every time I had to go back and say, I exist. So invariably, everyone in the life are applying these traits. But are we applying these traits methodically? I don't think so. We have to learn how to apply these traits methodically. Today, if you think the technology is changing, better become a self-learner. Pick up something that is of technology. There are some 25 technologies that we are talking about. It's going to be the future trend. Pick up one of the technology and try to say what that has got to say. Try to dirty your hand. If you have to code something, please start coding. Don't try to shy away from it. You will fail. Then you start looking at what the other person has done and what your competitors has done, what my friend has done. Be curious about things. And then eventually this trait becomes your signature trait. This trait become your, I would say, the trademark. And this trait will define you as to what you are. So the point is, the shape it is one trait that we saw has been successfully embraced by the 50 students that we came across, whom we have featured in the book called Shape It. And these 50 students have also accepted to be a mentor for the other students. There are email ID of the students in this book, and they have agreed to be a mentor for the other students who are listening to this session today as to how they can make them successful or their peers successful. Because many times today's generation, millennial, Gen Z, like to hear from their peers. So you have the email ID of your peers in this book who can help you to succeed in your journey and make shape it as your traits and shape it as a signature trait and help you advance in your career. You don't have to wait for somebody to come and say, do this, do that. Just follow this trait. So this is the last slide that I had, not taking much of your time. So we saw what engineering is. We saw what the digital world is, the way digital world is gearing up and where it is taking, given that we are in the pandemic situation, and how the post-pandemic situation is going to look like and what technologists are saying. And finally, all said and done, whatever might change around you, but the trait that you need to develop is the shape it trait, and that needs to be your signature trait. So that's something that I wanted to cover. So let me quickly take the questions here, if you don't mind. So let me come here. I hope you can see me. Yeah. So the questions that have come out in the chat box for me is, what is the future of data science? It's a very interesting question. This is a topic that was asked to some of us recently, even in the research. Yes, the data, everybody says data is the new oil. Yes, it is. And data science is going to define many things. I was designing the curriculum for the CBSE faculty development program. What I realized that people think data is just a number. No, data is just not a number. Data is going to be about the image. It's going to be about the sound, whatever that information can become as the data is a data. So even your capturing of your pictures, audio, video, everything. So how intelligently today the businesses are using this for the predictive analytics is going to be more and more prevalent in the coming days. So definitely the future is very bright for the data science. And that's the reason, by the way, I want to say that I have also done my master's in business analytics primarily because I saw that there is a career for that. And why 10, 12 mark matters, person have an average or below average? Okay. So this is a good question. Does the mark matters? Does your mark in the 10th or 12th mark matters? This is a question I get time and again in the counseling, because today your supply is so much in the market. So there should be some way to gauge a person or enter a person in a campus or a corporate. So you need to have some kind of a passport. So that passport becomes your mark. To some level, the mark matters, because or else it's going to be very, very difficult to find out who can be selected for the next level of discussions. So I would say the mark becomes your passport, but your work and your experience becomes your visa. So that you need to keep in mind. And how do we really extend our boundaries? I'm not able to think beyond what I really introduced to. Okay, now I have no harm in saying, or I don't feel shy in saying that I'm 45 plus years and above. And I had a mental taboo. I always call this as I had my invisible chain around me. I had put my boundaries around me. And why did I put that boundaries? Because we have created that boundaries. It's not that somebody else has created. And this is like the elephant in a temple. And if you chain the elephant, elephant can run away, but it never does it, because it has that invisible chain taboo in its mind that it really can't get away from there. The similar mindset that we have gotten into. So my suggestion to all the people who are listening, whether they are youngsters, whether they are people who are in Gen X or mid-40s, whatever age group that you are in, you will have to extend your boundaries in terms of learning new things. My experience has been I at least put half an hour to 1 hour of additional learning every day, because or else you're going to become a stale person in the organization or wherever you are, or even in the campuses. If you're not going to learn something new, you are going to become very redundant. So please be aware of it. Is math and data science and AI hard to learn? Absolutely not. Let me come to that. This is the question somebody was asking me the other day. Business analytics. There are two flavors of it: business analytics and data science. If you are getting into the business analytics work stream, or you want to get into that area, you really don't have to really dig through the algorithm and understand every nuances of that. That is not required. What you need to understand in those cases is how I can understand the business use case, and what the outcome of that in analysis is really trying to tell me. Is it telling me a story? That is exactly what you need to do. But when it comes to the data science, you have to understand a little depth of little bit of math. Definitely, I tell students that try to have some flair for calculus. Don't shy away from doing a differential equation or a calculus. Please do that, because math and science are going to be definitely a core subject that you want to love for life, because that is those two are the subject which has kept me alive even today. So that is one thing. And post-COVID, how to improve our career as an academician? So it's a very beautiful question. I was taking a session around a month back. We were talking about something called as the digital learning. You must have seen in the last 5 months, people have just latched on to this webinars. People are getting onto webinars, and the webinars are many different webinars are coming and bombarding us every day. So what can we do better? That's what the faculty was asking. The first thing I was telling is, when you are wanting to learn something new, the COVID situation has given you an opportunity. What is that opportunity? The digital learning. What is the digital learning? Take your subject, what you're teaching, see how you can put it in the digital learning platform. Use the concept of hook and flip, or what we call as a blended learning model into it. Have your learning, as you get into the blended learning model, what is going to happen is you will start learning the technology, you will start accepting the technology, you will start really going through the different aspects of the technology. So as a faculty, if you have to really get into improving your career, you have to start keeping digital as a core. Digital learning, blended learning, how you can transform your subject or your curriculum into this digital platform or LMS platform, whatever they call it today, how it needs to be done. And I also want to leave you with an interesting comment here, is that there are plethora of today the platforms available. And which one should we go for? What I see today is people just go pick something from Coursera, pick something from somewhere else and try to put it all together. Please don't do that. My suggestion is, when you are doing anything for your student, anything for yourself, have the passion towards the subject and see what can be online, what you can develop, and how you can become more confident in front of the camera and talk with a conviction of what you're teaching, gets into the online, and then you make the activity-based learning in the classroom. This is going to give you a lot of opportunity for people in academics. I'm telling you, we have been seeing a lot of opportunity knocking our doors of late. People have come to me as well personally asking, can you help us define what the digital learning is going to look like in the coming days for our institution? So keep watching this space, and I think we can do a wonderful job together in this area. The next thing is helpful and motivating. What are post-COVID opportunities for management graduates? I think this is an interesting questions coming up. In fact, I can quote one recent example that we came across. We had I would say 4 to 5 of the students interning with us in the organization in IBM, and we were doing the internship. The question that was posted are very similar. They asked, what is the post-COVID job opportunities going to look like? The post-COVID job opportunities are going to transform the way that we are going to work remotely, right? So one of the activities that we were talking to them is, how are you going to do remoteless delivery, and how we need to embrace the contactless delivery, how we are going to do the delivery, how are you going to define the framework for the delivery. The management students were helping us to define the policies, how we do really transform our workforce management, I would say the processes and framework. They were trying to come up with ideas. So you don't have to get disheartened that you're not going to get job opportunities. You are going to get job opportunities, but you have to really tap in those ideas and the use cases, what is going to be post-COVID and how you can latch onto it, right? So that is about the post-COVID for the management students. And then how to identify your right interest of work. Okay. This is what I was telling my son, because I don't know, it's student asking it or it's the person who's senior enough asking it, but I can tell you how I have told my son. I told my son every morning when you wake up, I would say every 4 hours or 5 hours, keep a notebook. Whenever you feel happy of the instance that made you very elated and happy, and you feel I'm on top of the world, write that moment. And many times I found that he was feeling so happy talking about the games, the gamification tools, and so on and so forth. So I said, possibly that's an area for you to look at. Today is applying for internship in Lego. So that's the right way to tap in where the interest lies in. That's how you really find out where you're interested. If you were to ask me, how do I feel happy about? I feel happy about talking to students. I feel happy about writing a book. I feel happy about having people around and counseling people. So that has been my strength. So I see where I feel happy about and what was my happiest moment, not the low moment, a happiest moment. I flip that into the area of my interest, and that's the right interest of the work that you have to pursue. Today, people are talking about passion and purpose. That's what we used to say passion in the earlier days, but today people are talking about the purpose. The purpose is what makes you happy. That's what it is. And the next question somebody was asking, did you ever feel that you are eating some deserving person's job? It's a very interesting question. I would say that sometimes, yes, we felt that. I would say when I felt that. Around 10 years back, when I was abroad, I had a bunch of people working with me who were in their mid-40s, like maybe late 40s. We had to let go of people for various reasons. At that time, I really felt, what have we done? It's all going to come in full circle one day. And yes, I did feel at that point, what would happen to that person? I know the person is deserving. There are sometimes you'll come across the business situations where you have to take that call. What you have to do is what is right for business. Sometimes you have to keep the facts in mind and then take a call. So you will be in a situation like that. That time you have to see what is right at that point in time and take that call. But emotions hits you hard, and you have to know how to let out that emotions and relieve the stress. And I did that at a later point in time, but it stays on in your memory for long. But I'm in good, I would say, contact with the people even today, because the kind of handshake that happened when they were departing from the corporate or the organization, I really made them feel that I was there and I would be listening to them wherever they go. I think you need to look at the human side of it, and you need to be compassionate as well. And the next thing is, what opportunities are for biomedical engineers? So I think this is again a very interesting question. So I'm not from the biomedical background, by the way. I'm an electrical electronics engineer. But I will try and address this question, and I will also help you to connect. Whoever is asking me, please connect with me as well. I think the point is the biomedical stream has, in the recent past, after I would say COVID, many students have been talking about they want to get into this field. They see that because of the telemedics and other areas growing up, this field of engineering is also going to see a major transition. And I would say, watch this space, and I'll be happy to connect this person. I have the email ID. I will connect you to one other person who's working on this area of biomedical engineering, and he's the SME. He should be able to help you further on this. The next question is on cybersecurity. I think there is a question coming up. So how is the cybersecurity and what needs to be done, and how it is the important future of cybersecurity and means of coping up to it? Absolutely. I was in one of the forum last year. The job market of cybersecurity is expanding, but do we have enough people? No. And you would be very surprised to know that one of the managers from the National Life Bank, where I own my account, she called me and she said, I want to do a certification on cybersecurity. I was asking, ma'am, why would you want to do that? And she said, I feel that our banking system will have to be really looked into, and we are really wanting to get prepared, because more and more we are going on to the online way of payment, and with the contactless interfaces coming up, you are seeing every transaction today is happening through a Google Pay, or you're using online banking platform to do that. So cybersecurity is one area where there is a higher demand for people, and we don't have many. And there is a big opportunity for you. So please, if you're a student interested in this area, don't shy away from taking this as well. Don't get stick on to the traditional IT and computer science. Look beyond that engineering discipline as well. This is a very good area to be in today. And I'm just looking at any other topic. I think there was somebody asking about okay, embedded systems. There was a question somebody is asking from how you provide. Please provide how the future of embedded system is going to look like. I worked in an organization, particularly on the embedded system, around 22 years back. We were manufacturing the CPUs for the computers. We were also supporting the other electronic products. The embedded system technology has been changing. The reason I say that, today your devices are becoming smaller and smaller. The more it becomes the smaller and sleeker, the technology advancement are more, right? It's going to be, you're going to see that I was talking even to one person in Tektronix systems. I used to think it's just the oscilloscope that we use in colleges to measure the data. But the kind of advancement that they have done, even in your oscilloscope, is humongous. Please go and see. So the embedded system technology is going to be another area to look at. Today we are talking about IoT. We are talking about various other aspects of how we can integrate various IoT systems to make the data more meaningful. The embedded system is going to be another driving factor, which is in the technology advancement to make it more sleeker. So look into this space as well. What is the opportunity for mechanical engineers? Absolutely, you do have an opportunity, mechanical engineers, because I used to work with an organization, a mechanical engineering organization called Timken Engineering and Research. I'm very proud of that organization because the reason I was very proud, I could see the advancement in the machinery that was happening. I could see that the ergonomics aspect taken care in the machinery. They were also looking at what can be made more comfortable for the people on the shop floor, and how easy it can be made to handle the equipment. So again, the mechanical engineering is also transforming with your electronics and IT and other aspects coming up. So this mechanical engineering in the shop floor today you can see tons and tons of advancement in technology as well in your machinery. So you don't have to get disheartened, whoever is doing the mechanical engineering. And also there is a question around what do you think? Sorry, I'm just reading the question on can you please summarize and talk to your students in my field of electron. Okay, there's some requests coming up. I think there are tons of various kind of requests coming up for me to come and talk in other sessions. But I think with that, it is 7 o'clock. It was in a 1-hour session, but very interesting question. I want to leave everybody with a thought here that don't get disheartened. The signature traits are going to make you what you are. And whether you are a Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, or any other generation of alpha, beta coming up, don't worry. This is a trait that we have seen making people successful. So I would like to thank NPTEL and IBM for giving me this wonderful opportunity and sharing my point of view and sharing my research around the shaped traits. So thank you so much.